For the actual test, Private Zadrozny received a high dose of the incapacitating agent, given intramuscularly to permit precise measurement of dosage. In 15 minutes, he won't be able to focus his eyes properly. In an hour, his speech will become difficult. Private First Class Hannon was given a medium dose. Hannon, a college graduate serving in the artillery, will feel woozy in 15 minutes. In 3 hours, he will be overcome by sleep, even though listed for duty. The third and fourth test participants reported to the aerosol branch of the laboratories to receive the incapacitating agent by inhalation. A low dose of agent was fed into the mixing bowl, and the longest weekend began for Specialist Fourth Class Carpenter, 23 years old and with 16 months in the infantry. Within an hour, Carpenter's hands will feel cold, his face hot. Borderline hallucinations will come late in the experiment. For the fourth volunteer, Sergeant Hall, there would be no effects. Hall was unaware that he was inhaling an inactive substance, in effect, an aerosol placebo. He is 24, a high school graduate, with 6 years military service in the engineers and infantry. He had received a full dose of the incapacitating agent in a prior test. The medium dose received by Private Hannon made him careless, but he worked with Sergeant Hall to maintain the situation map so that it reflected information from incoming messages.
Delta 1, this is Alpha 1. Over.
This is Delta 1, over.
Delta 1, this is Alpha 1. It is now 1232 hours. Set your clock to conform. Over.
Alpha 1, this is Delta 1, roger. Out.
Now 12:32, that's set the clock. That'll be a guesser. Set.
12:32.
The peak of the compound's physical effects was reached within 4 to 6 hours. The peak of mental incapacitation several hours later, when a simulated chemical alarm sounded. Inability to put on his protective mask demonstrated that the full dose recipient, Zadrozny, was totally ineffective as a team member. The team, therefore, had suffered 25% total casualties plus. Private Hannon also was a minus factor for 6.5 hours Friday. Hannon made numerous mistakes through Sunday without correcting them, jeopardizing the team's mission. Carpenter, the low-dose recipient, was operational but substandard in efficiency. Carpenter remained on the fringe of the group activity throughout the test. For Zadrozny, the high-dose subject, the peak of mental incapacitation arrived about 9 hours after exposure to the agent. He remained awake, experiencing hallucinations for a total of 36 hours. The severe disturbance in his mental processes overlapped the peak of physical incapacitation. Zadrozny was the team's #1 personnel problem. Constant vigil over the incapacitated man was needed to help control his tendency to panic as his tension and uneasiness mounted. Through the night, Zadrozny searched for an exit, even though more than 30 hours had elapsed since he last had a few hours' sleep. It is not uncommon for subjects exposed to this agent to go 1 or 2 days without sleep. Zadrozny spent the night searching, wandering, mumbling. At times, he attempted to take part in the team mission.
They giving you a message?
I'm waiting for it.
No, see if you can hear him. You can't hear him unless you have the telephone up to your ear.
Hey, let's watch that camera.
Yeah, try it anyway. Put the telephone to your head so you can hear him when he gives you a seat.
One with an electrode.
Use the telephone.
Meanwhile, from another location, a soldier was trying to contact the Delta 1 team with a message to be relayed.
Delta 1. This is Bravo 1. Message follows. Notify Alpha 1. Tango patrols are probing riverbed east of Brill. No aggressor contact. Reported at 1815 hours.
Finally, having received the message, Zadrozny tried to relay it.
Alpha 1, this is Delta 1. Message from Bravo 1 follows. 1, Dolphin taken. Nashville are printing red east of Brill. There has been no traffic on the Green Dolphin Blizzard up to 1815 hours. Over. Getting better.
Finally, after a day and a half without sleep, fatigue overcame the restlessness of Zadrozny's delirium. Beginning shortly after Saturday midnight, he logged 6.5 hours sleep. Through the 3-day test, he slept a total of 14.5 hours. After 24 hours rest, the completely recovered volunteers reviewed their experience. Carpenter, who had received a relatively low dose by inhalation, recalled some of the things that had happened.
What was this business over here in the corner? You were lying down and looking at the wall?
Well, the pores in the wall seem to be, I was looking, and they seem to be two armies on each side of one of the pieces of tape running down the wall, two armies converging. And I could almost see artillery pieces and cavalry, like a civil war, moving to one point. It seems like they walked up to the dividing line, and then everybody scattered, and then after that, I must have blinked my eyes, and just the walls in here.
Hannon, the volunteer who had been given a medium dose, had memories of a lackadaisical performance.
I remember talking on the telephone, and I would get mixed up, but I didn't feel like correcting it, or I just felt like I couldn't do anything about it. And it was kind of odd to me that I couldn't, but I couldn't.
Zadrozny, who had received the heaviest dosage, remembered when the drug effects were receding.
Zadrozny, when do you think you would have been able to resume normal function?
I think at about 2 in the morning, 2 o'clock Monday morning.
About 2.5 days.
Yes. That's when I felt I knew what was happening before that when I got up for the hot meal we had. But I didn't feel coordinated enough or something like that to take part in any action. So I went back to sleep, and then when I got up about 2, I felt I could do things.
The medical officer asked for comment from the volunteer who had been undrugged.
Like trying to get some drugs and drink some water. The way he acted, just his tongue was sticking to the roof of his mouth. And I just wanted to mix some water to break it away and kind of dampen his mouth. So.
Zadrozny was asked if he remembered why he had shown annoyance at efforts to help him. He was able to recall a feeling of resentment.
I wanted to be left alone, just to sit there and try and fend for myself, more or less. For instance, when I could fall on the floor, I wanted to get up by myself to prove to me that I could do it.
Did you feel that you didn't need all this help, or?
Yes, I did.
Do you think that was true now looking back at it?
No, I don't think it was true. I think I needed all the help that I got. Because the way, I can only remember falling once, and it seemed like any support I had was just suddenly removed from me, and I collapsed on the floor.
Well, I couldn't get Zadrozny to do anything. Don't you remember, you'd get him to sit down, he'd say, take the phone, and he'd take the phone message, and he'd start out, and by the time he got finished writing, he had written, if you could read it at all, it was something way out in his own world.
What were some of the things? Because it seemed like you remembered some of them yesterday.
Yes. Well, the drapes over there in the corner were several tall people. I mean, who were they were attempting to stop him from getting out, from finding another door to get out of.
What were you trying to get out for?
I don't know. It just seemed that I had to get out.
You have just seen highlights of a controlled test. In actual employment, this incapacitating agent would be dispersed by standard munitions, and the agent would enter the building through all non-protected openings. In a real combat situation, the entire communications team might have received full dosage. The 3-day test showed the nature of the agent's effects. Medical and psychological assessment in studies on more than 200 volunteers has confirmed its military significance as an incapacitating agent.
Well, how many people in Zadrozny's condition do you think a group of 4 men could stand?
I don't think they could handle more than just the one, sir.
I kind of felt, though, that the problem with Zadrozny was just keeping track of him, keeping him out of stuff. He looked to me like he could get around okay, but he was just in another world. And one guy is going to have to watch one guy.